I think we are live. Kia ora, everybody. Good morning. Well, good morning from New Zealand anyway. It's 7 a.m. here in Auckland. My name is Scott Mathieson and welcome to this How to Find a Job and Move to New Zealand webinar. We're excited to be here. I can see that there are a lot of people from around the world joining us today, which is absolutely fantastic. So good evening if you're in Europe, good afternoon if you're in the States, and maybe good morning if you're in other parts around here. I see there are some people from our local environment as well, so that's brilliant. So we're going to run through quite a lot today as quickly as we possibly can. The idea about these webinars is to give you as much succinct information so that you can take the next step on the move to New Zealand. Moving and migrating is a big move. At any days, any time, any circumstances, but especially now with COVID, a lot of changes have happened in immigration, and it is arguably more challenging. However, the demand for people to move to New Zealand has never been so big, and the demand for skilled people to come to New Zealand has never been so big. The slight problem we have is currently the borders are closed. So a lot of this webinar is about how to get prepared, to get ready, to make sure that you're at the front of the queue. So we have a lot of panelists on here today that have been in the industry for many, many, many years, and that is no exaggeration. So first things first, I will introduce you to our panelists, starting on my screen anyway, with Nassim Lalehzari, who is our Head of Immigration Services here at Working In. Nassim, if you could please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name's Nassim. I've been with Working In for over 10 years. I'm a licensed immigration advisor, and during my time with the company, I've literally helped thousands of individuals make the move and worked with thousands of companies as well now. So I'm excited to tell everyone about what's happening in the visa space.
Thanks, Nassim. And yes, Nassim mentioned that she's a licensed immigration advisor. We will cover off what that means later in this webinar, but it's very important that you appreciate the difference between an advisor and a licensed immigration advisor. All the way in the UK, one of our consultants, also a licensed immigration advisor who we've been working with for, blimey, almost 20 years now. Paul Goddard, if you could introduce yourself, Paul.
Yeah, hi everyone, my name's Paul and I am over in the UK at the moment, but I lived in New Zealand for 18 years up until very recently. I will be heading back to New Zealand at some point. Yeah, moved with my family back in 2003, wanted a better lifestyle, didn't know what it was, but went for it. You know, no regrets whatsoever. My children grew up in New Zealand. My grandson was born in New Zealand. And if you're looking for a really good work-life balance and in an amazing country, then you're in the right place on this webinar.
Fantastic. Yeah, so Paul is currently in the UK, but as he said, he's been living in New Zealand for 18 years. So is one of those unique people that have lived in the UK, lived in New Zealand, gone back to the UK, and has just got some amazing experiences to be able to share with you all. Which I just think is invaluable because experience is everything. Our next panelist is also from the UK, but been with Working In for over a decade now. Joe Bradshaw, if you could introduce yourself. Joe, if I just might add, is that Working In, we do immigration, we assist people with the immigration pathway, and we also assist people with the job. So our next two panelists, Joe and Hilary, are very much focused around the employment aspect. Joe, if you could say a few words.
Yeah, good morning. Hi, everybody. Yes, I'm Jo, as Scott said, and I've been Working In on and off for 15 years. Part of my family, actually, in New Zealand. I moved here to New Zealand from the UK over 20 years ago. And yeah, been absolutely loving it over here. And as Scott said, yeah, I head up the healthcare team here in New Zealand. And so I help healthcare professionals to secure a job and move to New Zealand.
Perfect. So yeah, Joe's a Brit, Paul's a Brit, Nassim is Australian, I'm a Kiwi, and our other Kiwi on this panelist, Hilary Bonham, who is also in the employment space, works in the infrastructure, construction, engineering space. Well, not solely, but primarily. Hilary.
Hi, thanks, Scott. Hi, everyone. Yes, I'm the International Recruitment Manager working in across different spaces. So we've got different teams. I am predominantly in the infrastructure space, so that covers engineering, construction and trades roles, but we also look after people who are looking for roles across IT, finance and other industries as well. Like the other panelists, I've also been at working in for a very long time. So again, very passionate about helping people like you guys with your journey of moving here to New Zealand. It is, as Scott said, a great country. And yeah, we've got there's a long journey for you guys to make if you want to move here. So we enjoy working with our candidates, but we've also been in market in New Zealand for 20 years. So we've got the benefit of some awesome employers across the country who we've had relationships for a really long time that use us to support them in finding the best talent like yourselves.
Thanks, Hilary. Yeah, and as I said, my name is Scott Mathieson. I'm the co-founder of Working In. We started this 20 years ago. We've been helping people move down to New Zealand and Australia now for all this time. All the people on the panel have been with us for a very long time, and I was just counting out the number of years, and there's over 75 years of experience on this webinar. So yeah, we're not fly-by-nighters, and we love what we do. And I think that's what keeps us here, keeps us assisting people to come down to this beautiful country, and hopefully we can help you too. So in terms of what we're going to run through today, first things first, just a very quick snapshot of the current situation, what's happening in New Zealand now. After that, we'll talk about the sort of the visa options. How do we get to New Zealand? What visas are available now, and how's that kind of changed with COVID? We'll look at the jobs and what we call the catch-22, because you need to get a job to get a visa. How do you get a visa with a job without a job, etc.? Well, you can't. So that Paul will take you through that. Then we'll look at the employment market. What's happening now in New Zealand? Where is the demand? Because that's really important. And Hilary and Joe will run through that, and Joe will go through a little bit around, what happens and how best to prepare yourself for that job. Then we'll look a little bit at the borders, the current border exemptions, because people are coming through the border much more than you think, and there are exemptions available, especially in the healthcare market. So we'll focus on that a little bit. And then it's more really about next steps. What do you do now? I mean, you're here, you've taken the first step. It's a massive first step, and everything starts with the first step. For many of you, it might not be the first step, but you're here anyway. And so from our perspective, how do you, with as little cost and as little time, get the clearest view of how you can move forward? So that's the summary of today. So we'll kick straight into it. And I'm going to go over to Nassim. Well, actually, I'll just give you a brief overview of where we are from my perspective. I'm not an immigration advisor, but I am a citizen of New Zealand, and we're currently in lockdown in Auckland, what we call level 3 lockdown, and we have been for some time. Now, we've only got 15 on average community cases per day with COVID, but our government has been very strict around how we try and deal with COVID. And yeah, we're in this lockdown phase. So I think about 80% of the population has now got at least a first vaccination. And for all of you that are listening that are wanting to come to New Zealand, what has been announced this week is that anybody who's not a citizen that's coming to New Zealand must have a double vaccination. So look, we are in a process like all countries where we're going to be opening the borders, and that's been indicated by the government in early 2022, slowly, and with some caveats like double vaccination. But the reality is that we desperately need people, and we also want people. So I'm going to put you on to Nassim now. I was going to tell you about how do I get that visa? What are the visa options, Nassim?
Thanks, Scott. Hi, everyone again. So at the moment, we have a system for visas for people who are offshore, and then a separate process if you're already here in New Zealand. Now, I talk about normal times being pre-COVID, in that in most cases we would apply for a work visa, whether that is via oh, excuse me, based on your job offer. So traditionally, it'd be something called an essential skills visa, and that will continue to be the type of temporary work visa that people apply for moving forward. And normally, concurrently, we would, start the residency visa application process as well. The reason why you'd end up doing both is because residence always takes so much longer, and obviously, once you've got the job, the employer doesn't necessarily want to wait years for you to arrive. So we would do both visa applications at the same time. You'd arrive in New Zealand, you'd start your job, your kids would go to school, everything would be, life as usual while you waited for your residency. Now, with the borders being closed at the moment, it's meant that we have a different type of process, or at least an additional one, in which we have to apply for something called a border exemption. Now, the government's decided that the borders are closed, no one's allowed in, but we know that that's not true, that it's actually more like a sieve and people are filtering through regardless. So over the last sort of 18 odd months, we've done hundreds of these border exemptions, both in the health and the infrastructure space. As we were talking about earlier, I was thinking, there's actually been quite a few people. And what that means is that you go through a two-step process in order to get into New Zealand. So the first is you sort of express your interest in wanting to be allowed to apply for a visa as an exception to instructions, whether it's based on you meeting the health criteria, or maybe you've got an infrastructure role that meets the criteria. And then once that's been approved, you're invited to apply for a visitor visa. The visitor visa gives you work rights, gives your family visitor rights. You arrive in New Zealand and we continue with that normal process that we would have otherwise, which is the essential skills work visa and preparing for residence. So that's the current lay of the land. So it's mostly the same, except that the government's just added an extra step. And we know from the 1st of November, any non-citizen that's entering the country must also have their double vaccination.
Thank you, Nazim. So what you're saying, just to be clear, in order to get residency in New Zealand, typically, you will need to obtain a work visa first. And in order to obtain a work visa, which is also called an essential skills work visa, you will need a job offer that meets criteria.
That's correct.
Once you have that work visa, then you are eligible to apply for residency under the skilled migrant category, which is a points-based system.
Yes. So that's the normal pathway for the majority of people coming to New Zealand. I mean, there's obviously other exceptions, but that's the main pathway for everybody.
Yeah. Thank you. Look, one thing I'll just say, look, please, I can see some, if you want to ask any questions, Paul will answer as many as he can, or any of the other panelists, so keep questions coming through. If we're unable to answer all the questions right now, we can answer them later. So that's really helpful. So Paul, if I can just move on to you and talk about the catch-22. It's always a big issue. I know, you're in the UK or you're in the US or you're in Singapore, South Africa. How on earth do you get a job in New Zealand to get that essential skills work visa? Because that's your very first step towards residency.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is the biggest hurdle. I've done thousands of calls with people all over the world over the years. And I always say to them, what's the main barrier that's stopping you moving? And 9 times out of 10, they'll say, how do I get a job offer when I'm not in New Zealand? And the reality is it's quite easy to understand why it's difficult if you put yourself in the employer's shoes. So if I'm an employer in New Zealand and you send me your CV, I look at your CV and I might say, wow, this person looks amazing. They're really good skills. They've got the right qualifications. They're ticking all the boxes. If they were in New Zealand right now, right in front of me, and they had a visa, I would give them a job. But because they're not right in front of me, and I don't know if they're going to get a visa or when they're going to get a visa or how they're going to get a visa or what I need to do so they can get a visa, or will they stay when they get to New Zealand? There's this endless list of doubt that enters your mind as an employer, and you need to be able to remove that doubt and fear for the employer. That's how you get around this catch-22 of I can't get a visa because I haven't got a job offer, and I can't get a job offer because I haven't got a visa. We have a full employment support strategy that we engage people with. Even now, even when the borders are closed, the clients that we're helping, although they might not be applying for jobs right now because, you know, the borders are closed, we're helping them and we're giving them the tools to do various things to, as you said, Scott, put themselves at the front of the queue. Because what's happening at the moment is the borders have been shut for 15 months. It will be about 18 months by the time they start to do the phased opening. That the demand of, you know, the amount of people wanting to move to New Zealand hasn't diminished. If anything, it's got bigger. And so there's this big queue of people building that want to get in. And the employers will have a pick of the crop there. And ultimately what the employers are going to do, and this is certainly what we're telling employers, is take the people who are at the front of the queue. The people at the front of the queue are the people who are fully prepared, everything in place, ready to go. All you need to do is offer them the job. We make sure it runs quickly and smoothly. That's how you get to the front of the queue. Catch 22 is remove the barriers for the employers. And I'll give you a tip and a hint. You can't do that on your own. You can tell an employer you're fully prepared and ready to move. That just says that you're keen. It doesn't remove the risk for them.
I'll unmute myself. Yeah, I mean, absolutely, Paul. And you know, we deal with employers every day, and it's sometimes it's quite frustrating when you've got amazingly talented people who, just because they're on the other side of the planet, are not being considered for any jobs. The employers, if you sit yourself in their shoes, they're very focused, you know, around what's immediate and what situations or what roles can be fulfilled immediately. So our role really is to try and discuss with them that we have somebody who's highly skilled, that meets immigration criteria, that all they need is a job offer, then the visa will be processed and then they'll be here in New Zealand. So, and I think that's really important because unfortunately, this is just human nature. Employers want to deal with people who they can basically make offers to immediately and can start immediately. Our role is to convince them otherwise. And Hilary, you know, you talk to people every day. I know that some of your employers are interviewing people at the moment from around the world. What is the state of the job market from your perspective? What is the demand? Are skilled migrants in demand?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Scott. So yes, we've got a number of clients who are crying out for people, and as Paul mentioned, the skill shortage is huge. There was one before we went into COVID, and so that's now even bigger than it was before. We've been in this situation for well over a year, and especially across some of my clients at the moment, there's really some great concern about how they're going to continue on at this level of the unknown. We are going to see an ease soon, which is exciting. So we've got a number of clients that are wanting to interview. They've got a huge amount of projects coming up. So we are currently interviewing at the moment. Job offers have been made with slightly different caveats on the terms around the borders. But I know Nassim's going to touch on border exemptions. Some of these people are getting through on visas now, and some will come through as soon as the borders ease. And I think it's really important to remember what Paul was just saying around being prepared. So the clients really only want to see people that are what we call New Zealand ready. So they've been through the process. They know they can get a visa. They're sort of sorted with their family. They've spent time with Paul. They know exactly what's involved, potentially where they want to be based in New Zealand. And then we talk very in-depthly with you once you get through that phase about where you want to work, where you want to be located, about your family. Potentially we might be able to place your partner. So there is a lot involved in the move here. And clients really like the fact that we take you through this beautiful journey to get you to the point where as soon as you can come to New Zealand.
Thanks, Hilary. Yeah, absolutely. I think you've hit it right on the spot there. I'm just trying to move through now because we're at 7:22 in New Zealand, and we don't want to take up all your time. But Joe Bradshaw is our healthcare specialist. You would have seen the screen just pop up there. I can see that we have a very large amount of healthcare specialists on this webinar. And look, we're not going to be focusing particularly on health. take this, if you're not in healthcare, as an example of the overall situation in New Zealand, because we have a demand for teachers and accountants and auditors and engineers and sheet metal workers and drivers. And, this is a country that's been built on migration ever since World War II. And New Zealand is like the Irish. We're massive diaspora. We're all over the world. So as much as we love our country, we also like to travel. So we've always got a shortage of people. And like every Western country, we have an aging population, and we're not replacing our aging population. So our rate of birth is below, our rate of birth rate is below 2. I think it's 1.87. So we just simply haven't created enough people to sustain our population growth. So immigration is absolutely vital. And because the borders have been shut for so long, we've now got this sort of welled up demand in all sectors. In fact, this week or last week, the government announced that they're going to grant residency to about 165,000 people that are onshore. And the skills that were being granted residency were quite incredible. Nazim, if you can just pick off from the top of your head some of the skills that were being granted residency, that will just give you the viewers out here an idea of the sort of shortages that we have down here.
Yeah, so we had the ones that everyone would expect, like your doctors, nurses, and engineers. But we also had things like farm workers and some of those other roles within primary industry that traditionally would have had a harder time or would have needed longer to qualify for residency. So 165,000 people qualify. The government, clearly identifying that there is an absolutely mind-boggling need for people, not just to stay in New Zealand, but then to further come as well, just because we physically don't have the population to get on with everything that we need to do. So every occupation you can think of under the sun seemed to be on the list. There was 4 different separate scarce lists, and the primary industry one was the most interesting because it was the sorts of roles that, most people don't even think about, because we always hear about the doctors, nurses, and engineers, electricians. It's sort of top of the mind. So very, very interesting. Very exciting too.
Yeah. Did I see mushroom picker on there?
Yeah, you did.
So if that's an example of how high skills are required in New Zealand, mushroom pickers are being granted residency, with full respect to the mushroom pickers. I think I'll now introduce you to Joe. Joe, if you can just quickly run through the situation in the healthcare industry. Joe is actively bringing healthcare professionals into New Zealand. A number are here already working and enjoying their new life. It's a really positive story. Obviously, the health industry around the world is under tremendous strain, but those healthcare workers that are coming to New Zealand are, from what I understand from Joe's feedback, are absolutely loving the move. So, Joe, can you just quickly run through your specific sector? And as I said before, if you're not in the healthcare sector, treat this with an open mind because it really reflects most sectors. Joe.
Hi, everybody. Yes, my specialisation is a healthcare sector. So just to give you a bit of a snapshot, as with most industry sectors in New Zealand, there is a significant shortage, and we're talking doctors, nurses, midwives, allied health and technical. In fact, New Zealand reportedly are saying that we need another 25,000 more nurses by 2030. So obviously that's a huge number, and we see similar numbers across other sectors as well in terms of those volumes needed. And so what I will say, and what Scott was saying, is that critical health workers are really fortunate because provided you meet the criteria by Immigration New Zealand and by the registration body, you are eligible to move to New Zealand right now. And as Scott said, I'm helping many people. And, since COVID started 18 months ago, we've had a constant stream of medical professionals coming into New Zealand that I've secured a job for, and our immigration team have secured a visa for. And so really the first thing that you can do, if you haven't done this already, is get started with your registration. So find out what your the right regulatory board is that you need to register with, whether you're a physio or whether you're a nurse or whether you're a doctor. There's different boards that you need to register with, and that process can take 3 to 6 months. So as Hilary was saying, you know, it's all about that preparation, getting yourself ready, and get your registration sorted. But please, in the meantime, feel free to talk to us, and we'll explain to you, you know, what is the best way to get all your ducks in a row, so that we can present you to an employer with all those factors in place that Paul talked about, knowing that you can get your visa, knowing what time frame you're moving, knowing that you and your whole family can move, what sort of location you're thinking of moving. And so we guide you through all those steps so that we can put you in a position where when we put you for an employer, we're putting your best foot forward and giving you the best chance of securing you that job.
Not doing very well on the mute button today. Thank you, Jo. So I think what Jo's covered off is really important, especially that registration. Healthcare in particular needs to have registration. But we're here to talk to you about the preparation. And there's a couple of things that you can do in preparation. I think the first thing that you can do is really understand whether you're eligible. Paul, what are you offering that can help people in terms of a consultation of 10 minutes?
Yeah, sorry, Scott, I was busy typing away. There's lots and lots of questions. Rapidly trying to fire off answers. And one of the things that people can see is we've just put up a link, and basically all you do is click the link, fill it in, and it's going to give us some basic information about you, because obviously there's a lot of people on this webinar. Some people we can help, some people we might not be able to help, or we could help further down the line or whatever. So we can always put you on the right track. That's the main thing. But basically, if you fill out the short form, which is in the link, we'll be able to look at your information. And if the information looks like we can add some benefit and put you on track, then you'll be offered a free 10 to 15 minute call with me. I call it a clarity session. Basically, I get your information, I listen to what you're trying to do and where you're at, give you some clarity around it, answer any basic questions you've got, and then show you a way forward, because that's what you need. At some point, you've got to stop spinning around on the internet, and you've got to get accurate information about you and your move so that you can see a way forward. And I'm sure that a lot of people on here will relate to that. A lot of people on here will know and be nodding their head saying, yeah, I'm spinning around on the internet and I'm not really going anywhere. The borders are going to be opening at some point in the not too distant future. You know, it's going to be phased and it's going to be stepped and it will be safe. But you need to be getting ready now. If you want to move within the next 6, 9, 12 months, 18 months, start doing stuff now. There's a free appraisal there. Just click the link and do it.
Yeah, look, fair enough, Paul. And I think just to reiterate, we just want to give people clarity. There's so much information spinning around out there. People don't really know whether they've got a pathway or not. And if they do, sometimes they don't. And if they don't, sometimes they do. There's so many different variables. And, you know, from our perspective, it's like, well, let's just put people on the right track. Let's make sure that people understand that they have a pathway or not. Or if they don't, what do they need to do to have that pathway? And, you know, that shouldn't cost much at all. But it gives you clarity right from the outset. So that's what we're about, is making sure you understand whether you have a pathway or not and what that might look like. And then we can help you or not. It's up to you. Take that further down the track. Obviously, we've helped thousands of people, but other people can do it themselves. We understand that. In this environment, it potentially might be more challenging, but look, everybody has an individual choice on how they go about their move. One thing we would say is, you know, if you're wholly committed to this, as Paul said, get committed, start now. Nazim, you're dealing with people who have had tremendous trouble getting documents. Can you just give us an example of that so that people understand, okay, I better start getting ready?
Yes, obviously in the last sort of year, we've been doing border exemptions in particular. And so with those individuals, we're having to put together quite a strong case. We're working with employers. We can manage that side of the process, but we can't necessarily manage the documents you need to get. So whether it's specific qualification documents that you've lost or misplaced or decided to shred. I don't know why people in the UK love shredding documents. That seems to be a common theme. Please don't shred your original documents. We will need them at some point. Qualification documents in particular, proving that you've got certain documents for any type of registration process that's needed, that can take time. And if you don't have it to hand and you need to go and now request it, and for whatever reason, the university or the school or, the institution that you studied is now operating on, shorter hours or a modified system, it can take you twice as long to get those documents. And that can then affect your visa process and then also how quickly you can start your job. So I think, that whole preparation piece is really, really important. The sooner you start, the sooner we can have a better idea as to what the timeline is going to look like.
Fantastic. And we said we'd touch on border exemptions because whilst Jo and her healthcare workers have managed border exemptions, Hilary has also obtained, well, not she hasn't personally, but her clients have been successful with border exemptions, companies like Kiwi Rail, for example. So it's not just limited to the health industry. Do you just quickly want to summarise how the border exceptions process works?
Yeah, so if you're coming based on a job, that's, you're not a New Zealand citizen's partner or the like. Most of the applicants that we've been assisting come through the other critical worker or the critical health worker. Now, in these roles, critical health is quite, I guess, clear. You work in health, you've got some sort of registration, and you have a job offer. For the other critical worker, that's potentially anybody. But we talk about how you need to have very unique or specialized skills that are not ordinarily available in New Zealand, or you're going to be working on one of the key infrastructure projects where the need has already been defined by government. So when that's the case, we need to do a little bit more work to try to fit you into one of the boxes so that we have a better chance of success on that first stage, which is the expression of interest. It's not impossible because we've obviously been getting results and all sorts of roles have been coming in. Sometimes people are surprised. We have employers call and say, oh, we heard you got so-and-so some people in the country. So I'd like to be able to say it's a finite definition of who qualifies and who doesn't, but it literally becomes us assessing on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, so it's not impossible. And I think the other reality is now that we're getting our vaccination rate up, and the government has already indicated, the Treasury has indicated that there'll be a loosening of the borders in January 2022, that for anybody who's sort of starting the process now, by the time they get all their documentation together and such and so forth, and potentially start interviewing with Hilary's employers or whoever it may be, we're going to be in the early part of next year anyway, and the border exceptions might not be such a big deal, that people might be able to just come in as per normal, as per pre-COVID. We don't know that, but the best thing to do is prepare. I think Paul sort of summarised it. He's kind of got like this similarly of a tsunami. You've got this big wall of people, haven't you, Paul? I really like how you described it. Can you just sort of explain what's going on? Because the demand,
It's a very visual thing. I mean, there's the borders, and there's New Zealand, and there's a wall at the moment, which is the restrictions, and people have just been banging against that wall for 15 months and growing and growing and growing. And you don't want to be waiting around for this date when the borders are open, because there isn't a date when the borders are going to be open. I'm answering this question now for a lot of people. There's a phased opening. They're not going to say on January the 1st, everyone's in. It would be absolute carnage. It's literally phased. We don't have the exact details of how that's going to be, except that people will have to be vaccinated and, will need job offers, etc. But it's going to be in steps. And so don't wait until this point when it's fully open, because, who knows when that is. But, you need to be getting ready now, because things are going to get easier in terms of border restrictions. And that wall is going to start coming down very slowly. And the employers are going to take the people who are at the front.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's really important, is that if there's an employer that needs 50 people, they're going to be hiring the first 50 people. You don't want to be 150th, because you'll miss out on that job offer. So that's our point, really.
That's a good point, Scott.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but that there is a window of opportunity here. Just because you're skilled and you've got good skills and experience, once those roles get filled, then that occupation is no longer in demand, and suddenly your opportunity has gone. So that's another reason, this isn't a permanent thing that you can always get into New Zealand, and unless maybe you're a health professional, but basically it's there's a window of opportunity.
Yeah, it's a very unique situation. Okay, look, it's 7:38 a.m. here in Auckland, and we're very cognizant of the time. Don't want to take up your evening. Get back to your dinner. So I just want to quickly summarize or wrap up and say goodbyes from everybody. So Hilary, what's your final recommendations for people from an employment perspective?
Yes, I think the key takeaways from today is obviously, as Paul was saying, to get started, I've already got clients who have got job orders with us. So we really have got opportunities now. They're interviewing. We're needing more people to come through that process. Once they've gone through the visa, I know they're eligible. Then my team are keen, and I are keen to meet with you, find out where your skill set sits, and where we can look to place you. I guess the biggest thing is the significant growth that's happening across the country. So there's loads of really exciting projects happening. The government's investing millions into the infrastructure space in particular, and also our IT area is having a phenomenal growth spurt. So it's just a really exciting time for you guys to start the process now. And it does take some time to kind of pop out the other end. So we are going to see that borders ease, and you guys will be at the spot where we can support you to get to New Zealand.
Thanks, Hilary. Thank you. And Joe.
Hi. Yes. Look, absolutely. I've got hundreds of opportunities at the moment. I'm getting calls all the time from hospitals throughout New Zealand asking me for different types of nurses and doctors, and this is every day, every single day. And so what I will say is, there's so many opportunities there. So please, get started on your registration, make a time to meet with Paul to do your free appraisal so that we know that you're actually eligible along with your family. And then we'll do everything to guide you on all those steps to put you in the position where you've got the best chance of securing a job. And then obviously we'll assist you with that full support beyond that too.
Cool. Thank you. And Nazim, a final word from you, please.
Oh, final word, no pressure. Maybe I think really I can only just reiterate what everyone else has said. Because of the work that I do, I end up dealing with employers, individuals and everyone else. And honestly, the preparation is the key. If you're not in the race, you can't expect to finish it. And so too many times people say, well, when will I get there? And I was like, I don't know. Have you started? Do you have your documents yet? I can't give you a timeline if you haven't prepared. So that's really, really important because that's the same information we can then feed over to Hilary and Joe so that they can also explain to employers, so-and-so is on the path to get here by X or Y date, given their circumstances. And it's actually really different for every person. So that's why getting started is crucial.
It's funny how you say that, Nazim. I've never thought of it, but in a sense we're like a coach because it's quite a grind, some of the stuff, isn't it? Getting all the information, having to find old documents, contacting institutions, doing medicals. And it helps to have someone pushing you along and deadlines, right?
Absolutely.
I've never thought of it in that way, but yeah, it's kind of what we do as well. Okay, and Paul, final word.
Final word. I'm having a mute issues there. Get the answers to your questions. I'm here typing away furiously, trying to answer questions. The best way to get the answers is give us the information we need so we can answer accurately. And just by doing that one simple thing, you'll have taken a massive step forward.
Clarity, right?
Yep.
And if it's bad news,
it's bad news. We tell you how to turn it into good news.
Yeah. And if it's good news, let's go.
If it's good news, we'll help you move.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Hey, look, thank you all those panelists. Thank you very much for Paul for staying up in the evening in the UK, 8 o'clock almost, and all my New Zealand-based panelists. Really appreciate it. And to everybody out there who's logged in to watch us this morning, we really appreciate it. I hope you got a lot of information here, and that this is, as I said right at the beginning, you know, you can turn your from first step, this webinar, into a second step. So Paul's available, fill in the assessment form, understand whether you've got a pathway, and keep the energy going, and would love to see you down here one day. So kia ora, good night, good afternoon, and see you later. Bye-bye.